A number of shareholders have asked questions regarding climate targets. We've chosen two as representative of this topic from shareholders Jack Batolis and Rachel Rainey. The first question. In August, 25 leading scientists at Australian universities wrote that achieving the Paris Agreement means the time has passed for any new fossil fuel infrastructure, including the proposed expansion of the gas industry in Australia. Yet, according to analysis by Market Forces, between 2016 and 19, ANZ loaned $2.2 billion to 17 new or expansionary fossil fuel projects that would enable the release of 4.1 billion tonnes of CO2. When will ANZ rule out funding the expansion of the fossil fuel industry? And the second question, a new global report on how finance is blowing the carbon budget has identified Woodside's Burrup hub gas developments in WA in the top 12 proposed fossil fuel projects globally that would make it impossible for the world to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees as agreed under the Paris Agreement. As a supporter of the Paris Agreement, how can ANZ be comfortable funding companies whose investment and growth plans would directly undermine the goals of this agreement?
Yeah, thank you, Jack, and thank you, Rachel, for the question. And those are probably representative of a lot of the questions that I and the executive get when we're talking to shareholders. I think they're very important topics. Let me just, again, frame where we stand as a bank on the whole issue of climate change. We've really got three core priorities. One is to work with our top 100 emitting customers to develop transition plans to a lower carbon future. Secondly, to help fund the investment that will be required for companies and individuals to make a transition to a new low carbon future. And thirdly, to reduce our own footprint. In terms of carbon and fossil fuels, we've recently updated our policy and been very explicit in that regard. And that is to state very clearly that we will not lend to any thermal coal projects where the customer has a greater than 10% revenue or reliance on thermal coal in their generating activities. Second of all, that we won't directly finance any new thermal coal plants or mines, and that we would expect as a result of our policies that we will pretty much withdraw from funding thermal coal over the 2020s and by 2030. Let me talk as well about where we're at in terms of funding, in terms of some of the questions about fossil fuels. Our funding to coal mining is now less than, to thermal coal mining is now less than 0.1% of our total book and has reduced by 70% since 2015. Similarly, our lending to oil and gas has been fairly flat. It's fluctuated between $7 and $8 billion over the last 4 to 5 years. Overall, if you look at power generation, 87% of our lending is to renewables and only 8% to gas and 5% to coal. And again, that lending to companies involved with fossil fuels and power generation is down 70% as well since 2015. I give you those stats because overall what you can see is we have a clear policy and we're making headway on that policy to work with customers to develop transition plans and to reduce our funding for carbon fuels.